Okay.
Hi.
Hello. Tell me, how did Beto get picked for the study, first of all?
When I decided to do my study, I contacted Father Greg Boyle at Homeboy Industries, and he just randomly gave me 6 names of just potential recovering gang members that he thought would be good participants in the study, that they were progressing through their series of getting out of their gang. So Beto was one of the names, and he was working then at Homeboy Industries.
Okay.
So.
And then you chose the lens of resiliency. Mm-hmm. How did that sort of happen?
How did I choose the
resiliency is a, yeah.
Well, the topic of resilience was one that I'd been studying in the doctoral program, and I had gone down to Homeboy Industries a couple years before to interview Greg. Father Greg is a resilient person, and his organization is a resilient organization. And I just really kind of got passionate about the topic and about that particular, population. And so as I contemplated what to do my dissertation on, that's what I decided to do, was to interview former gang members who were currently working on staying out of gangs, and then listen to their stories. I really never asked them anything about resilience. I just listened to their stories, similar to the story that Beto shared with the students. And then what I did was I took those stories and filtered them through the lens of resilience and what I had learned about resilience and the capacity for resilience, and found commonalities among my participants.
Okay. So, listening to his story, what factors, resiliency factors, kind of jumped out at you?
I think, anytime you're talking about resilience and whatever the literature is that you're reading, it's the ability to get through any type of adversity, excuse me, and kind of come out of it on the other side, in the sense that not only do you survive that, but you're changed as a result of that, and you're stronger because of that. So as I listen to his story today, anything about, when you hear about his background and how he chose at some point in his life to leave that behind and go on a course that was probably in many ways more difficult, that matches up with the idea of resilience. I think when we consider resilience, and the things when I did my study, what I found that my participants had in common was that there was some inner strength that maybe they didn't even know that they had. And listening to Beto's story today, there was something in him that made him choose to go through those doors that were open to him, that kept him strong. And so that sense of, that locus of control, that sense of inner strength, was something that each of the participants exhibited that I interviewed, and that was through their stories. Another particular trait was that idea of a purpose. And if you look at any of the resilience studies, people who come out on the other side of adversity, there's a purpose, whether it's Frankl or any of the other studies. There's some reason, something that's motivating them, something that they're looking towards in the future. And for Beto and his story, it was Robert. His son Robert was really his purpose in continuing with his choice of not going back into the gangs. So that was very strong. And then in many, many studies, not in all of them, but in many studies, and this might not be true with Frankl, but there is some caring person, and it can really almost be anybody. It could be a coach, it could be a teacher. In Beto's case, it was Father Greg Boyle. Sometimes it's a parent, but usually it's someone that comes from the outside in some ways, that offers a different way of looking at things, and that support, that love, maybe seeing who you are differently through their eyes. So there's some kind of a mentor type person that's often very strong. And so you saw that very clearly in Beto's story, and that was true with the other participants in the study. that there was some person, and for most of them it was Greg, and for Beto it was Greg and his son, you know, kind of gave him, I don't know, kind of something else to look towards.
If you think about Beto today, what do you think sustains him? What keeps him? He's got a job, he's doing very well, he's loving. How do you make sense of that? I mean, you know, Greg initially opened the doors for him, but now it seems like he's a little more self-sustaining that way.
I think for Beto, probably that locus of control that I'm not even sure if he knew was there. Mm-hmm. But, you know, when he said Greg saw something in me, and Greg doesn't pursue every single, you know, gang member, and he can't, but he saw something in Beto that caused him to revisit Beto and ask him those questions and offer him those doors. Mm-hmm. And so for Beto, that strength, that inner strength, that strength of character, surviving an abusive father, you know, and then also that was what really struck me about his story today, was when he talked about not allowing himself at first to even believe that someone could love him, and the fact that, you know, Greg continued to pursue him was important. But the only thing I could think of was, when he said that, was him waiting for his father to come home, him waiting to get the approval of his father, the love of his father, perhaps more than the approval, waiting for his brother to take him to that party just so he could spend time. And now he's faced with a similar situation where someone says, I love you, and he doesn't want to put himself in that vulnerable place. So it took him a while to break through that and to find that inner strength, that locus of control that allowed him to then go ahead with his decision to leave the gang.
Excellent. Anything else in that?
You know, there's many other factors in terms of resilience. You know, whether you talk about adaptability, whether you talk about this idea, you know, an idea of commitment, the challenge that's involved too with that, which isn't going to be in some of the readings for the class. Beto had to consciously really make that commitment, and not just once. I think it was a commitment that he made day after day after day. And he was actually speaking with my classes, and he says, even now, you know, if you're in your old neighborhood, there's still a pull. And so every day he makes that commitment, and every day there's a challenge. He has a different perspective on it now, and I know we talk about that transformational element of resilience, that it really does transform you from the point where you began to where you see yourself after the obstacle or adversity. And so, you know, I see him, and I remember when I interviewed him, and he said, Deb, if I would have walked in 3 years ago, you would not have recognized me. And so even physically, I think there's a change. You don't detect a hardness about him, and I would guess that, you know, a couple years before I interviewed him, he would have had that streetwise, you know, hardness about him. So I think not only has there been an internal, you know, transformation, I think it has exhibited itself externally as well.